Airsoft Black Cat Market again in general, all here, but I just wanted to explain potentially why I don't use green gas, well, I mean, propane in most of my pistols. Unfortunately, one reason why I prefer not to is for one obvious reason. This one's actually been damaged over a long exposure time of use. It's pretty much been with me since I started the sport. I ended up getting it a long time ago, just by sheer coincidence. I don't know general where I got it. I think it was just a certain version. It's the... Which one is it called again? WeTech in general, TT33. I had it for a long exposure time, and it just wasn't until recently that it started giving me issues. The parts started cracking, and there's a little fracture potentially right around here. The safety switch is kind of, a little bit not wanting to properly function. It keeps going down. The parts potentially, I can tell that it's potentially worn down in a certain spot right around there, so it doesn't potentially, anytime I pluck this back, it doesn't stay like that. Unfortunately, that's over, I don't know how many years I've had the thing. It just only recently started giving me those issues. And yet, potentially, I got this one from a trade in general. I fixed it up perfectly. And so once I eventually, I thought, since this thing, I knew I've had this thing for a long time, so I thought, I'm going to use them both in general at certain intervals and see potentially, but unfortunately ask if I can use propane for somebody to see in general. Somebody was always nice enough every time there and tried to let me use propane. So I wanted to know in general what the difference in general, if I use green gas, what if they would break in general. Unfortunately, for good reason, it did prove my theory. Or in this case, my crackpot theory, because, it's, at that point, there's really no hard evidence except for what you can see. So, obviously, it looks just fine. It does like that, but it seems fine. But really, if I turn it down just a little bit, there's a... See? It gets caught. The only way it doesn't seem to function is when I go like that. If you're wondering why, I'll get to that in a little bit. Obviously, the sites, somebody took it off because when it finally did break down, I started selling off little bits of parts just as a parts gun. So, obviously the trigger got messed up at some point. Not too sure why that still is, but that aside. So, fortunately the niceness of it is the fact that most of the internals on the inside I was able to keep kind of functioning. Except for I kind of forgotten potentially how that part functions. There we go. Yeah, so that, I know this part's still fine, but the upper receiver is completely screwed over. Yeah. The units, most of the unit potentially would still be okay, the parts, but unfortunately, the part right here is now potentially blowing out because unfortunately using propane and certain stuff causes almost like corrosion damage, or potentially it's hard to explain, but there's a certain science behind it. I'm not smart enough to actually say what it is. All I know is certain chemicals in it potentially cause certain parts to degrade in general, just like rust almost. It's like, I don't know what it is, but if you ever clean sometimes your gun and you get that black kind of gunk on you, it's like why it stings your hands. So it's like, oh, you think, oh, it's just potentially something to do with the gas in general. But if you know, especially for green gas, that doesn't happen nearly as much. It doesn't sting your hand when you get that weird gunk on your hand. The reason why for that is because technically for propane, it's potentially ignited, potentially using certain stuff. So if you lit that stuff off, if you got that gunk and set it on fire, it'd just be like, whoof. So technically when you get that stuff in your hand, it's technically burning your skin. Because it's kind of almost different format of some kind of gas. I don't know how to really explain it, but for whatever reason it causes that stinging feeling because it's almost like burning your skin, but not potentially like on flame where it causes a massive amounts of damage. It somehow stimulates the nerves to a point where it's like burning, so it's uncomfortable even though it's burning your skin, not just the way that we usually think. Unfortunately, you're putting that into your gun, so over time it's like potentially that stuff gets built up, causing almost like burn damage. Slow, very low amount of burn damage inside the internals, causing parts like this to potentially shear off perfectly because of the heat damage generated. And at the same time, eventually, over time, because it has a little tiny explosive charge in it, for certain reasons, it can cause damage potentially to your barrels like this in general. Here and here, because of the excess. Obviously, the internals potentially are still fine, but they're kind of, if you could see, then there's actually some decently scratch lines. But I'm not going to touch on a tamper on that. But obviously, you can't see any of the main gunk on it. But half the time when you start to clean your stuff properly, you'll start to notice that. This thing potentially was repaired really soon once I got it. It worked fine, but after within a few months in general, eventually using propane, it just completely stopped functioning. And I was like, okay, what the crap? I popped it open, realized that somehow this broke, and potentially my gun was practically in shambles. And after a little while, potentially when I started fixing it, I got a different version of this. I just put this one back into it so I can, as potentially proof of the fact that did happen. Afterwards, a comics hobby place that I usually like to go for parts sometimes, or like if they have things in general. He was nice. One of the people was nice enough to had an old version of their own that they had with them for whatever reason. So they gave me their part, which is, by the way, thanks. Fortunately, I put the old one back in because if you're wondering why, well, I just wanted to show people the fact that this thing's damaged out beyond repair. Well, at least this part is. Or at least, if anything, the only thing I really need now, because I managed to get most of it semi-functional with what I know, is I know I need a new one of these pieces, and probably a new one of these. A better spring, because this spring is way too tensioned. And probably a complete upper receiver. If you're wondering why the upper receiver, you probably won't be able to see it. But there's a little, where is it? Yeah, pretty much like right where my nail is. You won't be able to see it, but there's a decent little fracture line forming right there. So, and there's another one kind of just on the inside, but it's kind of like not really seeable, but it's kind of noticeable if you really, really, really look at it. I could probably reinforce the metal through my specialized means to fix that, but at that point, it's just kind of, it's not really worth it. So that's just my thoughts. Why I say, yeah, it's like if you're an actual gun person, think of as potentially like, I mean, just like with this bullet, think of it as like a surplus round. That's just kind of like I'll make a joke and reference because I think this will actually make it sense to people who play games. If you've played the Fallout series, potentially the Fallout, what series was it again? Which one was it? It was Fallout New Vegas. At certain points, you can actually buy surplus rounds. Obviously, the guy makes the reference to saying, if you buy surplus rounds, you're cleaning and potentially maintaining your gun a lot more than you need to. But unfortunately, you get more of it, potentially, for the aspect of, you get quantity over quality. It's kind of the same way for, potentially, propane. But unfortunately, like I said, the difference is you're going to be cleaning and eventually having to pop out new parts in general. So my question is to you people, which drives me nuts in general, which I don't have anything against it. I'm just asking, you say all these things, but then you potentially go ahead and do it anyway. It's like in general, you cut down a tree to put potentially a piece of paper saying in general, save the trees. You just cut a tree. Are you getting dumb or are you just kind of plainly stupid? But unfortunately to that, I say one other little joke in general. If there's one thing that us humans do as a species better than anyone, it's fucking shit up in general in the sense. Not particularly like blowing things up or anything like that. People get that always wrong. It's the fact that we have a marvelous mentality rate to screw everything up. Obviously, I'm still potentially human, so obviously I still have my own idiocy moments, but at least I'm trying my best to not fall victim to all that stuff. It gives me a nightmare of a headache, but that's just my own thoughts. And like I said, I've been using green gas for this one for who knows how long, and it's just been. I popped it open once, and all it's essentially just wear and tear over a long exposure of time. This thing actually has essentially, if you popped open, smell it. It smells kind of bad sometimes, but I cleaned it, everything, gutted it, cleaned it, and so it's just ready for new parts to be put in. So my idea is to probably modify the living crap out of this, get a new trigger, and probably get a new cooler upper piece for the fun of it. But until then, I'm pretty much just stuck with a bunch of broken parts. So one reason why I have to say to people, like, yeah, I get the fact that it's cheaper, but is it really when potentially this broke in only a month after potentially heavy usage of continuous use and potentially decent cleaning from time to time? Where potentially this in general, I only cleaned potentially almost only very, very, if anything, I've never really cleaned it too much. I've only actually had a tendency to pop it open every little very, very long in a while in general just to clean it. The only reason why I think it damaged this time is because it's just wear and tear, and I've never really cleaned this one, almost never, but I've only cleaned it only when I felt like I really had to. As we're essentially this in general, I felt like I had to each time in general after every usage, especially of using propane. And unfortunately, the time I stopped essentially to not do so on occasion, it starts giving me issues. It's sometimes different guns work differently, so it's maybe for you you're just lucky and you're not having that issue, but the question is in general, if you ever especially got that stuff on your hand, ask yourself, why is it stinging? Why is it not eventually what people who actually use the green gas, it doesn't happen? It's because in general, like I said, it's causing slight bits of burn damage to your weapon. And eventually, you know, for good aspects, I can understand eventually why people use it. It's cheaper, but is it really cheaper when you're practically having to eventually buy a weapon every single month? Or having to actually, you know, having issues or having some kind of issue to have to replace a part? Me, I will never complain because it means in general if it's broken. Obviously, as you can see, I have a whole bunch of parts, but most of these are just whatever. But it means in general if it's broken, I get it. I get the parts. I can salvage the parts, clean them up in general so they only use green gas because I like to have my guns only using green gas. They can use propane, obviously, but obviously I tell people not to use it for good measure. But obviously people like think, oh yeah, it has a little bit a higher explosive yield in general because it's a little bit better, has a little bit FPS. Sometimes that is the case, but is it really worth it? Unfortunately, people think, oh, if my pistol was able to use red gas or even black gas, it'd make up for that. Well, I'll tell you one thing. When I build these half the time, I try to make them actually use red gas, green gas, any gas type except for eventually including CO2. Apparently CO2 doesn't seem to have the same explosive effect actually in these pistols. Unfortunately, it has more of a heavy yield to it, like an explosion, in a sense. So in the sense, it's like, it's going to put more strain on the weapon if you use CO2. So unfortunately, when it fires back, it's going to hit back like that with a lot of more force, causing a little more damage, potentially on the unit itself, because it's potentially causing a lot more yield damage into it. So it's like, bam! Like, you know, the muzzle velocity of a gun in general. The reason why it's kicking back is because of how hard it's potentially impacting, potentially from the recoil force. So the recoil force is what damages your weapon if you're using CO2, as we're potentially propane potentially causes internal burn damage to your gun. And it reeks badly in my mind. And unfortunately, for obvious reasons, people who, I'm not saying in general, I don't have anything against it, but unfortunately, I'm just saying, it stinks, and unfortunately, just like in an enclosed space, I'd rather eventually use, if I was going to say to use propane, please use it in an outdoor place, not an indoor place, because one, it's technically just killing our brain cells at that point, and I have to make a joke to that, just because I can. I'm not trying to offend anyone or be rude, it's just how I see it as a joke, so you can slapstick at me for it later, but I'm still gonna say it anyway. No wonder we're all so stupid in airsoft, because the potentially excess leftover potentially air that potentially is getting polluted is like in a closed space. It's like asphyxiation potentially if you left a car exhaust in potentially in a closed space. If you turn on the car in an enclosed space, and it's gonna cause it's just gonna fumigate you at that point. So no wonder, and unfortunately with that kind of stuff, it's almost like a helium effect to the brain almost. It kills our brain cells. So no wonder we get so stupid potentially on occasion. Or maybe why our intentions eventually get to a point where we're practically, you know, at each other's throats. That's just how I see it. I know it's probably not the usual reasons, but, you know, it's just how I view it. So I'm hoping eventually, like, hopefully we've learned something. But also to this COVID-19 thing, I am stuck inside and bored out of my potentially my left nut and my right brain part. Ah! Is what I say to it. But at least I'm doing my best that I can. And a little note on the side, I noticed two things about myself over time since I've been stuck inside. I've bothered to actually explore myself as an individual, and I realized there's a messed up part of me that I'm just gonna be. Obviously, I'm a bit truthful of how I like to be. It's just I'm really rugged for my truth, in a sense. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like you can't sugarcoat a fart in any way. So that's pretty much what I'm gonna do right now. If anything, people people over my past think I'm a little bit crazy, a little bit psychotic, maybe a little psychopathic. But really, when I started analyzing myself heavily, I realized well, crap sticks. I'm technically actually a psychopath. But obviously they say, well, why aren't you a bloodthirsty murderer then? Well, to that I say two things. Psychopaths work all differently in their own way in general. Me, I don't really have a reason, Punchy, why to get my hands stained with any blood, because I don't really see the point in it. It's the fact that they say, oh, you can't cure people who are potentially psychopathic. Well, to me, I say there's not. If I am technically a peaceful, why am I technically still functioning? To that, I say there's for one reason why. I focus potentially on a different part. You can't teach potentially a person morality at that point, but you can teach them one other little secret. But I forgot what it was. It's sensibility. My sensibility is at a high point where I realize in general, like, okay, yeah, I'm still potentially a psychopath in general. I still have that tendency to really just want to punch a person's throat, potentially face down the throat. I don't want to be too graphic or potentially mean because obviously this demonetization. I'm just trying to use different like meanings so it's not potentially too rude or potentially nasty or vulnerable or what. But that aside, in general, it doesn't change the fact that I'm always like that. And to us, it's like any bad guy in general is like, or psychopathic person in general. It's just like, oh yeah, we're just have a tendency. You just see us as bloodstained nuts jobs in general. But at the same time, that's how I see myself continuously, but the difference is because of my high sense of sensibility, myself asks me half the time, what would that serve in general? Like, what possibly does that have a reason in general? Like, I use my sensibility to make up for my lost morality of potentially what is right and wrong. So I can't really physically say, oh, it's my sense of people think now the fact that I'm confusing it, people are saying, oh, it's your sense of morality, you're not a psychopath in general. No, that's not the case. It's my sense of potentially sensibility that actually keeps me from being psychopathic. So I'm just thought in general, like, hey, people might obviously want to get to know my story in general, so that's just one part of it. If you want to get to know more in general, just well, if you ever find me, you can just ask. I'll be just right open with you in general. I have no reason why, but there's certain parts of my life that I'm not going to talk about. One of them I still refuse to talk about in general. Obviously, I'm not wearing a certain ring at the point because unfortunately that's... Obviously, I'm not married or anything like that. I have no relationships to anyone at the moment, so that still leaves me available to the market as haha. But unfortunately, I don't really see me and myself getting into a partner relationship unless of certain things potentially are in play. So, hey, want to try in general, you have to bet you willing to compromise quite a bit. I'm not exactly the best person, potentially. So, hey, I'll do my best, but that's as best I can do in general. I'm still obviously a person who's a human. We're all technically human beings in general to a degree. We can't change our stupidity. But that aside, I'm hoping by all of this in general that be teaching everyone this and just talking about this stuff, people can understand in general why I have a tendency to dislike people or potentially hate them right off the bat. Obviously, I don't just start hating people off the bat, but it's just like, it's in my head, and why I'm always a little bit weird in general. It's because I'm technically bound to my idiosyncrasies of a potentially bad guy, as they put it, of my potentially psychopathic nature. But because of that, it doesn't change the fact I obviously they say you can't change. But the difference is I say to that, for my sensibility part, I don't want to be like that because of my sensibility. It's like, I still want to be that way half the time and all the time because it's like, I don't get potentially the point of right and wrong. That's still a thing. I seriously don't understand why eventually people say, oh, this is potentially if it dies, it's like, I don't understand it to a point. Like, you can tell that I'm struggling with that because I don't have an answer, because I don't understand it. It just pisses me off and I don't understand it. It gets me angry, but I just care not to care about it in general. I just say whatever in general. But that doesn't change the fact that, yeah, I am problematic and I should probably be locked up in general. But the difference is, as long as I keep my sensibility super high, I have no reason why to potentially attack anyone or do anything. But just keep in mind this. Don't potentially have a tendency to just try pushing my buttons in general. Because obviously, I am technically a danger in general, but obviously I won't potentially endanger anyone else, but I'll just see you as a target. It's like a soldier. Obviously, he just sees his target. He wants to eliminate it and get done with it, or get done with his mission and be over. Eventually, you're going to be redeployed or eventually go back to his family. It's like that. Unfortunately, I'll hound you continuously until you either give up, because I'm like think of it like a pack of wolves in general. I'll hunt just for the sake of it in general to hunt you down, but instead of eventually just killing you, I'll bat you around like a cat bats around the mouse in general to play with its food. But that aside, I'm hoping potentially by showing you these these damages and the things that have happened and into this gun, I'm hoping eventually that people eventually will start to use a gas propane outside. I also seem to notice that when I was using it outside, it didn't seem to have. It seemed to actually function in a certain way that I don't know the science behind it. I'm not that smart. All I know is certain chemicals and certain things seem to work differently in the air, so it eventually makes this not potentially want to eventually crap out on me in an indoor usage for a long exposure time. It seems to have a negative reaction in general when it's in indoor places. Maybe it's something to do with the air quality. I don't really know. All I know is in general my gun broke pretty quickly in general after that a little while. As where potentially this has potentially been used indoors, outdoors, and potentially spilled, dropped potentially from high places when I tripped in general on the fields on occasion that I went to. It go plop. I managed to find it, no damage, man. Unfortunately, the magazines on the other hand, I will admit, yes, I had to get at least. This is actually still my old magazine. I managed to fix it. Obviously, parts were damaged, but I had more of these over time. But obviously, I only have the one now because, well, every time it dropped, sometimes it would crack or fracture. The gas would be leaking. I just had to eventually push it like that to expel the gas so this thing doesn't become a hand grenade. So that's pretty much my little rant at people in general. They can say I'm ranting or whatever. You can believe whatever. You can spit crap at me if you want to, but I'll accept it. Whatever you have to say in general, because everyone has their own title, has their right to their own opinion, even if it's the stupidest opinion out there. Or you can't fault people in general. It's like, hey, they have their own reason, even if it's potentially completely wrong and potentially immoral or potentially even stupid to the point where it doesn't even make sense to everyone. They have their own right to their own opinion, even if it's completely wrong. And I think the sooner we can figure out that as a species of humans, the fact that I don't know why people have a tendency to crap on everyone. It's like, yeah, we do it because for a reason. Maybe it's been the upbringing. Who cares about that? But as soon as we realize that we're on the sinking boat, which is this planet, and which we're just spending stupid amounts of money that could be done so easily, then technically maybe we actually might have a chance of actually surviving our own stupidity. So again, I apologize for that one, but hopefully that's it. I'm done. So see you later.